is what about cholesterol? Because I think that is a really important thing.
I really wanted to talk about that.
Yeah, awesome. Because there's some, I think you saw that thing about the Oreo cookies. Did you see that?
Yes,
too?
I did. Yeah, let's talk about that.
So anyway, there's a little backstory on this. And last time I mentioned a guy named Dave Feldman, and he was a guy that, he's an engineer, pretty smart guy, and he goes on a low carb, higher fat diet, and his cholesterol, he feels great. He's like, oh my God, everything feels great, but his cholesterol shoots through the roof. And he's like, oh my God, I'm going to die, right? So he's freaked out about this stuff. And he starts looking into it very mechanistically and spending years and years and years studying this stuff. And finally puts together this sort of theory. And it's still theory, but they're showing that there's a lot of evidence showing that it's probably likely true, called the lean mass hyperresponder. And there's something called a lipid energy model. And so what this Oreo cookie thing is another researcher. He's a PhD from Oxford. He's also finishing his medical degree at Harvard. And his name's Nick Norwitz. And he basically said, look, this lipid energy model works like this. When you cut carbs low and you get lean, right, your body says, hey, there's not a lot of energy in my cells. My liver glycogen isn't full. My muscles aren't full of energy. So I need to get energy there somehow. And so what happens is the liver starts sending fat out into the bloodstream, like so you have energy to work, right? And so what he's showing is that if I just add Oreo cookies or some other energy-dense, maybe junk food in there, the body will say, hey, I've got plenty of energy now, so the liver shuts down. It doesn't traffic the cholesterol anymore, or the triglycerides and the cholesterol. So that sort of validates what's going on here. And so, but the question is it bad if my cholesterol is really high, but I'm fit, I'm lean, I don't have diabetes, I don't have prediabetes, I don't have insulin resistance, I don't have high blood pressure, I'm otherwise metabolically healthy? Because you see these people. So you see they're lean athletes, they go on a diet, like a carnivore diet or even a ketogenic diet, and they're like, I feel great, it's the best I've felt in years, but my cholesterol's through the roof, so I got to stop. And so that's the real question. So on December 8th, there's going to be a landmark study that's going to be presented by a guy named Matt Budoff, who's a cardiologist out of UCLA. I think he's he's attached to UCLA somewhere. And basically what they did was they took 100 people, all who have sky-high cholesterol. We're talking like total cholesterol, 500, 600, 700 milligrams per deciliter. It's enough to give your doctor a heart attack. You walk in there with your cholesterol, it's like 600, what the hell? So he's got all these patients, they are all otherwise metabolically healthy, though. None of them are diabetics. None of them have blood pressure issues. They're relatively lean. And what they did was they did high-level CT angiography, these people, looking really detailed at how much plaque's in their blood vessels. And they're all older guys. They're like average age, like our age, like mid-50s, like mid-late 50s, right? So this is where you'd expect to start seeing heart disease. And when they did that scan, almost none of them had any level of significant, vascular disease. They were like clean arteries. And so what they're doing is they're running them for a year, and then they're going to repeat the study, right? And say, in 1 year, has anything occurred? Now, the criticism of that will be that, it takes 20 years to do that. But Matt Budoff is like the world-leading expert on how fast vascular disease develops, right? So he's a guy that designed the study. He knows this stuff. And so he said a year will show us for sure if vascular disease is going to occur. So what they're doing on the 8th is they're showing the preliminary data that shows all these people have almost no heart disease, and they compare it to something called the Miami Heart data set, which is like the perfect data set for if you want to compare what's going on with vascular disease. And so in February, they'll finish up the collection of data, and then we'll get to see what happens after a year. Now, I suspect what will happen is they'll show no progression, little progression, or even reversal, which would be shocking because all these people are saying cholesterol causes heart disease. Because if you listen to guys like, because I know you've got Peter T on here, and he says, look, it's just a matter of how much cholesterol over how much time. If it's high for a long period of time, you're going to get heart disease. But if this turns out to be what I think it's going to show, which it likely will show, then that throws a monkey wrench in that whole theory, because it's like, wait a minute, maybe it's a dependent variable. Maybe if you're not fat, out of shape, have high blood pressure and diabetes, that LDL cholesterol being high is not as much of a problem as we thought it was, which is, that's paradigm shifting, quite honestly.
Where did the theory of LDL cholesterol being bad for you come from?
Well, I mean, that goes back into when they started looking at cholesterol, this is in rabbits, way back in like the 1920s or something like that. They started feeding rabbits high cholesterol diets, and the rabbits got heart disease.
Well, rabbits don't really eat high cholesterol.
No, they don't. They
diets.
don't. Really, it's an unnatural diet for them. But they started looking at, the associational data started out back in the 50s when Eisenhower had his heart attack, and everybody's freaking out because, we saw a rise in heart disease, 1940s, 1950s. And it's been a number one killer in Western populations since then. And so, a guy named Ansel Keys was one of the ones that started promoting that theory. They did associational studies where they say, well, look at these countries. They eat a lot of saturated fat and they have a high cholesterol, and they die more commonly out of heart disease. And so that basically data has been done over and over again. I mean, they've done Mendelian randomization studies, which there's some problems with those types of things. They've done studies where they can show that, we can lower cholesterol and cardiovascular disease decreases. So we know that, that's the whole premise behind statin drugs. Some people think it's a pleomorphic effect, or it's like a side effect, like maybe it's decreasing the inflammation. And by decreasing the inflammation, you're actually improving heart disease. But there's been, there's a ton of evidence that would point to, yes, that is what's going on. Now, what I would say is, again, you're looking at a general population. And the other thing is all-cause mortality. So clearly there's a lot of evidence that points to, normally they like your total cholesterol below like 190, LDL below 100, something like that. But if we look at like population studies and all-cause mortality, cancer, heart disease, dementia, infectious disease, so on and so forth, the people with higher cholesterol actually live longer. They're the ones that live longer. And so the question is, maybe I won't get a heart attack, but I'm going to get cancer instead because my cholesterol is too low, perhaps. Now, the critics of that will say it's reverse causality. It's like, well, the only reason your cholesterol was low was because you had cancer, right? And cancer is making your cholesterol go down because cholesterol, LDL cholesterol, and some of the other lipoproteins actually have a function. They participate in our immune response. So it's there for a reason. It's not just for the hell of it, right? We have a reason for this stuff. And so that, but there's a plethora of studies on this stuff. Some of it's been paid for by the pharmaceutical industries, which, of course, there's a little bit of conflict of interest in some of that, I would imagine. But again, if you talk to 99% of the cardiologists, they'll be on board with this. But like I said, this sort of population, which we never studied, we have no data on these people. It's like if you go on a carnivore diet, and Joe, I know you've gotten lean, you feel good, probably your blood pressure is good, probably your glucose is good. Does that mean it's dangerous for you? And the answer is we don't know yet, but this study will shed a ton of light on this. And so this is coming out, like I said, the preliminary data December 8th when Budov presents to the big conference, and then when they finish collecting the full data in February, they'll probably publish that probably spring, summer, something like that.
Are you aware